You ever have one of those moments where someone pushes your buttons so hard, you can literally feel your blood start to boil. And in your head, you're like, oh, I could destroy them right now. But something holds you back. We've all been there. That moment when your pride wants the mic. Your ego's pacing backstage, ready to go viral with a comeback or a power move. And just before you act, there's a flicker of awareness. Is this really who I want to be? See, here's the truth. Ego is fast. Karma is patient. Ego reacts. Karma waits. Ego wants to win now. Karma plays the long game. This isn't just about relationships or arguments. This is about who you become when you think no one's watching. Because life is watching. And the way we show up when it's hardest, that's what life mirrors back to us. So today we're going to talk about what really happens when ego acts, and why, without fail, karma reacts. And more importantly, how to move from reaction to reflection, from ego-driven decisions to soul-aligned ones. Because the way we act today, it echoes into what we attract tomorrow. We all have moments when we feel small, overlooked, disrespected, unappreciated. And in those moments, it's easy to let the ego take control. The ego doesn't like feeling small. It hates being vulnerable. So it does what it knows best. It fights back. It postures. It defends. It shouts when it should listen. It blames others when we're really hurting inside. But here's the truth we don't often talk about. The ego acts loudest when we feel weakest. Think about a time you snapped at someone, not because they did something terrible, but because you were already having a rough day. Maybe you felt left out. Maybe you were doubting yourself. And instead of sitting with that discomfort, your ego jumped in and said, "No one treats me like that," or "I'll show them." So you acted. You lashed out, withdrew, got cold, sent that message you half regretted the moment it was sent. That was your ego trying to protect your pride, not your peace. What's fascinating is how predictable karma is in these moments. Karma isn't a punishment. It's not the universe getting revenge. It's just the natural consequence of energy meeting energy. When we act from ego, we attract situations that feed that same energy. More drama, more resistance, more friction. Why? Because ego creates walls, not bridges. It pushes people away when what we really want is connection. And karma responds by showing us, sometimes painfully, what happens when we choose fear over love, control over vulnerability. Let's say someone hurts you. Maybe they betray your trust or dismiss your feelings. Your ego will say, cut them off. Make them feel it. Don't let them win. And sure, that might give you a short-lived sense of power. But karma's not looking at your pride. It's watching your patterns. And if your pattern is to react from pain, karma will keep giving you more chances to break that cycle. Which means you might keep attracting people who trigger you, not because you deserve pain, but because you haven't yet learned how to respond from your higher self. And that's the catch. Karma isn't just about cause and effect. It's about reflection and growth. It holds up a mirror and says, this version of you, the one driven by fear, pride, and insecurity, is not the final version. But if you keep letting ego take the wheel, this is the road you'll stay on. What we often miss is that the biggest strength isn't found in reacting, but in pausing. It takes more courage to breathe than to break, more strength to reflect than to retaliate. When we feel small, the instinct is to make others feel even smaller, so we can feel bigger by comparison. But that never works, because what we're really seeking isn't power, it's peace, it's connection, it's respect. And you can't get those things through ego. You can only receive them when you show up authentically, even when it's uncomfortable. So, next time your ego rises up, when you feel that tightness in your chest, that pressure to prove something, that inner voice screaming, don't let them win. Stop and ask her, what part of me is hurting right now? Because that's the part that needs your attention, not more defense, not more drama, just your awareness. The moment you recognize that ego speaks loudest when you feel smallest, you also realize that you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to act from that place. You can choose differently. And when you do, Karma doesn't need to teach you the same lesson again. It shifts with you, because the moment you stop reacting from ego is the moment life starts responding with grace. In every disagreement, there's a choice. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be connected? Most of us don't pause long enough to ask that question. We're too deep in the heat of the moment. Someone says something that hits a nerve, and before we know it, we're in defense mode. We're crafting comebacks, rehearsing arguments, proving our intelligence, our strength, our righteousness. But underneath all of that, there's usually a silent fear. The fear of not being seen, heard, or respected. And when we let the ego steer, the outcome might look like a win. But it often comes at the cost of something more valuable: trust, closeness, or emotional safety. The ego thrives on competition. It wants to score points. It wants the last word. It needs to be right, to be validated, to be superior. In relationships, whether romantic, professional, or personal, this shows up all the time. You say something that doesn't land the right way, and instead of listening, your partner doubles down. Or maybe you make a mistake, and instead of apologizing, you justify it with a dozen reasons why it wasn't your fault. That's ego in action. It convinces us that vulnerability is weakness, and that admitting fault means losing power. But in reality, when you let ego win the moment, you start losing the relationship, slowly, quietly, and sometimes irreversibly. The irony is that what the ego thinks it's protecting, your image, your pride, your value, is exactly what it puts at risk, because people don't stay connected to perfection. They connected to honesty, to humility, to effort. When you're more invested in being right than being real, the relationship becomes a battlefield instead of a partnership. And karma, in its subtle and intelligent way, responds by mirroring that back to you. You might notice more tension, more distance, more situations where no one seems to get you. That's not punishment, that's feedback. The truth is, we don't remember people for how flawless their logic was in an argument. We remember how they made us feel, especially when things got tough. Did they make space for us? Did they hear us? Did they soften when we were vulnerable? Or did they double down to protect themselves? Those moments define relationships, and karma has a way of circling back those emotional echoes. If you make people feel small just to prove a point, life often brings you into spaces where you feel unseen too, not to hurt you, but to show you the impact of your energy. It's not always obvious in the moment. You might think, I handled that well. I didn't back down. But if someone walked away from the conversation feeling misunderstood, shamed, or dismissed, then the interaction wasn't a win. It was a withdrawal from the emotional bank account you share with that person. And over time, those withdrawals add up. Karma doesn't arrive with fireworks. It shows up quietly, in miscommunication, in growing distance, in that sinking feeling that something is off. What many people don't realize is that every difficult moment in a relationship is an opportunity to either prove your ego or build your bond. When you choose to stay curious instead of combative, to ask instead of accuse, to pause instead of pounce, you're sending a different message, not just to the other person, but to life itself. You're saying, I value connection more than control, and karma responds to that shift. The energy changes, the dynamic evolves, conversations get deeper, not sharper, and trust begins to rebuild. In the end, being right might win you the moment, but being present, being kind, being human, that's what wins you the relationship. Not just with others, but with yourself. Because when you quiet the ego long enough to hear what really matters, you stop fighting battles and start building bridges. And life, in return, meets you there. Karma is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, often with a tone of revenge or justice. Someone does something shady, and we say, karma will get them. But that's not really how it works. Karma isn't about punishment, it's about education. It doesn't operate on a scale of did bad, so bad things will happen to you. It operates on awareness. Its goal isn't to hurt you, it's to grow you. And it often delivers its lessons through patterns. patterns that repeat themselves until you finally look inward and ask, why is this still happening to me? That's not karma being cruel. That's karma being patient. Life has a way of circling us back to the same situations, the same feelings, even the same kinds of people, just in different forms. You might think, this relationship is totally different. But then a few months in, you're facing the same emotional dynamic you swore you'd never go through again. Why? Because ego will always try to fix the past by repeating it. And karma says, not until you learn what you need to learn. And there's nothing random about the people who challenge us, trigger us, or walk away from us. They're mirrors. They show us the parts of ourselves that are still healing, still reactive, still fragile. But the ego doesn't like looking in the mirror. The ego says, they were the problem. I did everything right. And as long as we keep telling that story, karma keeps handing us the same script. Because nothing changes until we take responsibility for our role in the story. Let's say you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, or you keep ending up in friendships where you feel used. It's tempting to think there's something wrong with everyone else. But karma invites you to ask a deeper question. What is this here to teach me about my boundaries, my self-worth, or my patterns? When you ask that, everything shifts. Because now, instead of reacting from the ego, trying to control others, defend yourself, or escape the discomfort, you're responding with curiosity. And karma loves curiosity. It rewards growth. It's not easy. Sometimes the lessons come wrapped in heartbreak, betrayal, or disappointment. And it's natural to want to close off, to harden, to say, I'll never let this happen again. But the real growth happens when you stay open enough to learn. Not just about others, but about yourself. About what you tolerate, what you avoid, what you believe you deserve. And every time you do that, karma doesn't need to teach you the same lesson again. Because you've graduated from that chapter. Think of karma less like a punishment system and more like a teacher who's deeply invested in your evolution. It's not trying to ruin your plans, it's trying to reveal your patterns. And the ego resists that. It wants to skip the lessons, fast, forward to the reward, prove it already knows the answer. But karma doesn't rush. It's not interested in how fast you get there. It's interested in who you become along the way. If you're facing a pattern in your life that feels stuck or cyclical, ask yourself, what am I still meant to learn here? Not from a place of blame, but from a place of ownership. Because when you own your part, you reclaim your power. And when you step into that awareness, karma shifts. The people change. The experiences evolve. You start attracting challenges that match your new level, not because life got easier, but because you got wiser. Every moment of pain, every moment of frustration is a doorway to a deeper understanding of yourself. And the sooner you walk through it, the sooner karma will stop repeating the lesson. It's not here to punish who you are. It's here to reveal who you're meant to become. The energy you bring into a situation has a way of shaping what you get back. It's not always instant, and it's rarely obvious at first. But over time, patterns emerge. When you act from ego, when your actions are driven by fear, insecurity, or the need to control, you may get short-term results, but they don't last. They don't satisfy. That's because karma responds not to the outcome, but to the energy behind the action. If your energy is manipulative, defensive, or transactional, life tends to bring you people and experiences that mirror that back to you. You might get what you wanted on paper, but feel more disconnected, more alone, or more stuck than ever. When we act from love, real love, not performance or pretense, we start to attract something entirely different. Acting from love doesn't mean being passive or overly nice. It means showing up with clarity, honesty, and self-respect. It means setting boundaries with compassion, telling the truth even when it's hard, and choosing integrity over impulse. It's not the easy path, but it's the one that leads to growth. Because when you operate from a place of authenticity, karma brings you people who are also doing that work. People who value honesty over ego. People who want real connection, not just attention. One of the clearest examples of this is how we handle rejection or disappointment. When ego leads, we try to control how others see us. We might lash out, ghost someone, seek revenge, or pretend we never cared. But all of that comes from a place of fear. And when we act from fear, we tend to attract more fear-driven situations, more games, more uncertainty, more emotional distance. But when we face those same moments from a place of self-worth, the energy shifts. Maybe we still feel hurt, but we choose to respond instead of react. We choose to learn instead of lash out. And karma responds by bringing more peace, more clarity, and better alignment into our lives. You've probably experienced this without even realizing it. Think of a time you let someone go with grace, even when they hurt you. Maybe you never got closure, never got the apology, but eventually life sent you something better. Not because you forced it, but because you created space for it. That's karma in motion. That's what happens when you don't let your ego write the script. Because ego tries to micromanage the ending. Love just shows up honestly and lets life take it from there. The challenge, of course, is that acting from love can feel like weakness at first. It's not flashy. It doesn't always get immediate recognition. But the rewards it brings are deeper. You stop repeating toxic dynamics. You stop chasing people who don't choose you. You stop needing external validation to feel enough. And the relationships that do show up, they're more fulfilling, more stable, more real, because they're built on truth, not performance. Life is always listening to your energy. The way you treat people when you have nothing to gain. The way you handle situations that don't go your way. The way you respond when no one's watching. That's what karma picks up on. And when you consistently show up with love, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something, you start living in alignment with the person you're becoming, not the person your ego is trying to protect. Karma isn't keeping score, it's keeping alignment. It doesn't reward perfection, it rewards intention. And when your intentions are rooted in love, patience, and humility, what you attract begins to shift. Life meets you where you are, but only when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. The energy you offer is the invitation, and karma accepts it on your behalf. There's a moment in everyone's life where they have to choose between how they look and who they are. The ego is obsessed with appearance. It wants to control perception. It asks, how do I look? What do they think of me? Am I coming across as strong, smart, attractive, successful? And so we spend time curating an image, editing our words, filtering our truth, all to maintain a version of ourselves that looks good from the outside. But that performance, while it might impress others, often leaves us feeling hollow, because the soul is asking a very different question. Who am I becoming? That difference is everything. The ego lives in the moment. It wants to win today, be liked today, prove something today. It craves recognition, praise, and control. But the soul plays the long game. It's not about your image, it's about your evolution. And karma, which is often misunderstood as some form of instant justice, responds more to who you're becoming than who you're pretending to be. When you make decisions based on image, you might get applause, but when you make decisions based on integrity, you get growth. You've probably seen this in action. Someone chooses to stay silent to avoid judgment, even though they know the truth. Someone else compromises their values to please a crowd, just for the sake of being liked. The ego claps, the soul stays quiet. But eventually, karma shows up, not to punish, but to redirect. You feel out of alignment, relationships start to feel empty. You wake up wondering why, even with all the approval, you still feel anxious, disconnected, or unsure. That's karma saying, you've drifted too far from your truth. We live in a world where looking good is often valued more than being good, where being seen as successful matters more than being deeply fulfilled. But karma doesn't care how many followers you have, how perfect your life's on the outside, or how many times you win the argument. Karma cares about who you are when no one's watching. It cares about whether you're becoming more honest, more loving, more grounded, and more self-aware. The The soul isn't interested in building a reputation. It's building a legacy. And that legacy starts with the decisions you make when it would be easier to fake it. Think of how different your life feels when you start asking, is this who I want to be? Instead of, how will this make me look? That shift changes everything. You begin speaking more honestly. You begin walking away from situations that might impress people but drain you internally. You start making peace with not being liked by everyone because you've decided to like yourself enough to stop performing. And that's when karma begins to reflect your inner shift. You start attracting people who value your truth, not your image. You start experiencing opportunities that align with your growth, not your need for approval. There's freedom in not needing to be seen a certain way. There's strength in choosing character over comfort. It's not always the easy path. Sometimes you'll lose people. Sometimes you'll feel misunderstood. But what you gain is something ego can't offer: self-respect, peace, and alignment. And those things don't fade when the applause stops. They grow stronger over time. When you live from your soul, you stop chasing moments that feel good temporarily and start investing in a life that feels meaningful long-term. The world might not notice your integrity right away, but karma does. It always does. Because the soul's work isn't about showing off. It's about showing up, quietly, consistently, authentically. And in that process, you stop chasing who you think you should be, and you finally become who you were meant to be. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is no move at all. In a world that glorifies quick comebacks, instant reactions, and always having the last word, silence can feel like weakness. The ego hates silence. It interprets it as losing, as being walked over. It tells you, you need to say something. You need to prove them wrong. You need to show them who they're messing with. But that urgency, that need to react, that's ego trying to reclaim power it never actually lost. Because real power doesn't shout. It doesn't scramble. It doesn't need to be right. It simply is. There's a deep wisdom in not responding to everything that provokes you. Not because you're afraid. Not because you don't care. But because you've realized your peace is more valuable than your pride. The ego wants to protect your image. Your soul wants to protect your energy. And karma listens to that difference. It doesn't reward the person who makes the most noise. It aligns with the person who moves with intention. Silence, when rooted in awareness, is not avoidance. It's mastery. Think of a time when someone insulted you, dismissed you, maybe even betrayed you, and your first instinct was to clap back, to retaliate, to match their energy. That's a very human response. But when you pause, when you allow the emotion to pass without attaching to it, something powerful happens. Clarity steps in. And from that clarity, you realize some people want your reaction more than they want resolution. They feed off your cause because it distracts them from their own. Your silence, in that moment, isn't submission. It's discernment. I see what this is, and I choose not to dance with it. We often confuse silence with passivity. But in truth, silence can be the most active form of protection you have. It says, I will not contribute more noise to a situation already loud with ego. It keeps you from spiraling into conversations that go nowhere, arguments that just circle blame, or relationships that thrive on emotional bait. Karma reacts not to the fact that you said nothing, but to the fact that you didn't lower yourself in order to feel seen. That restraint has energy. And that energy sets a different kind of boundary, one that doesn't need words to be respected. The people who understand you don't need constant explanations. The ones who don't, no explanation would ever be enough. That's something ego doesn't like to accept. It wants everyone to get it, to agree with you, to admit you were right. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is alignment. Your responsibility is staying close to your center, especially when someone tries to pull you off course. The more you grow, the more you realize not every insult needs an answer. Not every challenge needs a defense. Some things resolve themselves when you step back. Some energies collapse when they're no longer fed. When you stop reacting to drama The people who thrive on it either shift or leave your space. That's karma. It's not always some big cosmic event. Often, it's just the quiet removal of the things you no longer respond to. Silence doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply enough to not let emotions take the wheel. It means you're secure enough to let someone misunderstand you without needing to correct them. And that level of inner strength, that's not the absence of ego. That's the transformation of it. You've trained it to sit down so your higher self can speak louder, even if that voice speaks in silence. The loudest person isn't always the strongest. The calmest one often is, because they've learned that peace isn't just a destination. It's a decision made moment by moment, especially in the spaces where ego begs to act. And when you choose silence not from fear, but from awareness, karma responds in kind, with grace, with clarity, and with the kind of justice that only time and truth can deliver. When we look at the journey of ego and karma, what becomes clear is this: ego acts fast, fueled by fear and pride, but karma responds with patience and wisdom, reflecting back exactly what we put out into the world. The challenge and the opportunity is learning to recognize when our ego is in the driver's seat and choosing instead to respond with awareness, love, and integrity. Because it's in those moments of conscious choice that we step into our true power, not the power to control or win, but the power to grow, to heal, and to create deeper, more meaningful connections. When we stop reacting and start reflecting, when we let go of the need to be right and embrace the courage to be real, that's when karma shifts and life begins to mirror back not just the actions of our ego, but the evolution of our soul. So, let's choose wisely, show up authentically, and trust that when ego acts, karma will always react. And together, they guide us toward becoming the best version of ourselves.